Back at it again with some more videos that I might be getting in trouble if I make too early. Because I think, if everything works out, this video is probably going to be published on the 20th. It's being recorded a few days beforehand. Yeah, I'm going on a trip later in the month. Multiple trips, actually, so I gotta get some videos pre-recorded down there, and that includes pre-scheduling the show. Which is why, when it comes to this player on the Boston Bruins, Pavel Zacha, a center option who is on the market, if this guy ends up getting traded sometime before this video is uploaded on YouTube, then I will look like the ultimate fool, and ultimately my efforts on making this video would have gone to waste. But assuming he is actually not traded yet, we have some opinions to dive into in regards to some of my favorite teams and whether or not they would be an appropriate landing spot for the 28-year-old Czech center. Pavel Zacha is 6'4", 207 left-handed guy, signed on till the end of 2027, making $4.75 million a year. This previous year, he had 47 points in 82 games played, which is not bad considering the fact that the Boston Bruins are kinda not great at the moment. He had 59 points in 78 games the year before that, and then 57 points the year before that. It's true that whenever I think of Pavel Zacha, the numbers that he ends up acquiring nowadays are kind of disappointing, supposedly, and I only say that because of what he was supposed to be. This guy was taken 6th overall in 2015, ahead of some very notable names. He was taken right after Strome, Marner, Hanifin, Eichel, and McDavid. And he was taken before Zach Werenski, Timo Meier, Mikko Rantanen, Jake DeBrusk, Matthew Barzal, Kyle Connor, Brock Besser, Travis Konechny. A bunch of really talented names went after Pavel Zacha in the 2015 draft. And admittedly, he was really good in 2014-15. It's why he went so high in the draft to begin with. But Pavel Zacha took a while. He was never able to be that big two-way center that produced all the points that he did in the OHL with the New Jersey Devils, the team that drafted him 6th overall. He inevitably found a lot more of a hold in the NHL with Boston, though, as he's been a lot more productive the past 3 seasons. But right now, the Bees are in a pretty tough spot. They could be looking at trading away Zacha, they could be looking at trading away Mittelstadt, which is why we're diving into 2 of my favorite teams, whose analysts and reporters have gone out there and discussed the idea of Zacha over to them. Let's open things up by reading an article on HabsFanatics.com from earlier this week by Elias Edmondson that dives into whether or not Pavel Zacha could be a potential Canadiens' second-line center. This article goes out there and acknowledges the existence of Mason McTavish, but then goes out there and says that he is not on the move just yet. Now, we're diving into some other commentary from Boston guys here. You have Jimmy Murphy, who made an appearance on the Sick podcast with Tony Marinaro. Murphy is a primary Boston beat reporter, and he goes out there and says this, that it's only speculation, but there's never smoke without fire. According to Murphy, Zacha would be a very short-term solution for the Canadiens, and he isn't sure that he'd be better at wing or at center. Murphy said on RG.org earlier last week that trade rumors continue to surround the Boston Bruins, with Korpisalo and Zacha's names consistently coming up. It's also unclear if Boston is willing to trade him. In fact, their strategy since the trade deadline has been rather puzzling. They claim to want to make a strong playoff push, yet act like a team that wants to stay in the mix while also getting younger. Zacha, 28, is under contract for 2 more years, and he'd produce some points. If he were to land in Montreal, there's no doubt he'd be an asset in that lineup. You can listen to the discussion around the 39th minute of the podcast below. And linked is an episode of the Sick podcast from earlier in August with Jimmy Murphy talking about Pavel Zacha and some other stuff. So it's kind of interesting here that Murphy straight up addresses the idea of Zacha in Montreal's system and what he could be, whether or not he'd be more effective at wing or at center. But to help us out even more, to expand upon the conversation, let's go over onto another article that talks about Pavel Zacha and the Vancouver Canucks. Edward Jackson published this piece earlier in the week as well, and it cites some commentary made by Cam Robinson on Sakaris and Price, and also some commentary by Rob Williams, also on Sakaris and Price. So Sakaris and Price has still been going out there. They've still been making their episodes, and they have NHL people coming out there and talking about stuff. This is what Cam Robinson said earlier, I think it was 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago or last week, something like that, about any potential Boston Bruins and Canucks trade talk. Either Pavel Zacha or Casey Mittelstadt would represent upgrades for the Vancouver Canucks. I like Mittelstadt, Robinson said. They bring different qualities to their game, but I think Mittelstadt has a little bit of higher pure offensive skill. Zacha is the bigger body and can kind of bang a little bit more, but does, he has a couple of decent seasons under his belt too. The price to acquire, it's not going to be cheap for either of those guys, I don't think. Boston's probably going to be a little more open to moving out right now. I think they're in a transitional phase. But yes, I think Vancouver would surely be calling on both of those players. These comments are not necessarily new. We've already spoken about what Cam Robinson had to say about the Boston Senators in Vancouver. But then you also had Rob Williams of Daily Hive coming onto the show a few days ago too, talking about how Pavel Zacha fits that profile a little bit more. A guy that can kill penalties. He's bigger. He's still just 28 years old. But he's shown it more in the NHL, I think, than Mittelstadt has. So I think that would be your guy. If you're looking for the type of profile that you'd want as a second-line center, he has offensive ability and maybe brings a little different element than Elias Pettersson. I think Zacha is probably the guy I would lean to a little bit more. Zacha, 28, has 200 more games of NHL experience than Mittelstadt, and no disrespect to the former 8th overall pick, but with where the Canucks are right now, wanting to make a deep playoff run while Quinn Hughes is still with the club, Pavel Zacha would hands down be the better fit. It's unclear if the Canucks will end up adding someone else at this point, or if they'll look internally to fill any holes they have in their roster, but if the opportunity arises, Patrick Allvin should make an attempt to land Pavel Zacha, who has 2 years left on his deal at $4.75 million. So, Vancouver, Montreal, I think either of these teams could use a guy like Zacha. Just thinking about what Zacha could be with Ivan Demidov and Patrick Laine, or what he could be with Evander Kane and Connor Garland. I mean, there are some really interesting line combinations possible for this guy if he were to get sent to either Vancouver or Montreal. The fact that we're getting people talking about it, though, from both fan bases and both beats, it does create an interesting conversation and a potential bidding war, you could say, for the Boston Bruins to deal with in regards to teams asking for their players. With that in mind, though, the Boston Bruins, they're okay, they do have some talented pieces as well. Pavel Zacha has had a pretty interesting set of line mates in the past, but now you think about it, the fact that Casey Mittelstadt is still on that team, the fact that Elias Lindholm is supposed to be the top line center, it kind of adds some difficulty if you wanted to project Zacha as a full-time center option next season, unless you wanted to play him on the third line, which I don't really know if that's all too possible. All of a sudden it's either of these two guys, Mittelstadt or Zacha, could be moved, and you're starting to see sort of the logjam here whilst Boston is trying to get younger, which could lead into that decision-making as a whole. So, with all this in mind, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How do you feel about Pavel Zacha and the idea of either Montreal or Vancouver acquiring this guy in a trade? Do you think he fits with Vancouver or Montreal a little bit better? Which line mates do you think he would excel with more? Is it an Evander Kane that gets him going if he plays center over there? Or does he play better with a Patrick Laine and a Demidov? Where do you think Pavel Zacha fits the best? And what do you think the trade price should be? Let me know in the comment section all your opinions. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.